All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the November 28th, 2025 working group meeting. We are 1 month away from 2026, which is hard to believe. It feels like 2025 just started. Um, we'll start today with new memberships. Going down our list here, I see that Masood, I hope I pronounced that correctly, from the University of Windsor is here. Would you be able to introduce yourself to the group? What brings you here?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here. My name is Masood. I'm a faculty at University of Windsor School of Computer Science. I'm also CTO of a robotics startup focused in autonomous mobility and applied AI. My background spans from AI, robotics, digital twins, precision agriculture, and I actually started university with agriculture engineering. And I joined this group because I strongly believe that the next major leap in agriculture will come from integrated robotics, autonomy, and data-driven operations. And I'm really interested in accelerating the validation and deployment of real-world robotic systems in farming and reduce the labor bottlenecks that actually we see in Windsor, Ontario, Essex area. I'm so excited to contribute to discussions here and learn about this group and collaborate on research and looking forward to it.
Excellent. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Um, Going down the list here, I believe that's the only person I see. However, if I've missed you, or if this is your first time joining and you haven't introduced yourself before, please raise your hand. Ian McClellan, please go. McLennan, sorry. Please go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep, you're coming through.
So I'm a new member of staff at Northern Ontario Farm Innovation Alliance. So I work with Leah, who you've all heard speak before. Yeah, we help farmers with getting funding for innovative projects. So both of us are sit in and listen on the group to learn about what's new and exciting in ag robotics. I actually have a bit of a background in robotics. I'm new to agriculture, but I previously worked in prototyping and assembly with Deep Trekker, making ROVs in Kitchener, and then Swap Robotics, building autonomous snowplows and lawnmowers for solar fields. So yeah, we're just excited to learn about what products are coming online and what we can start pushing out to the farmers in Northern Ontario. So thanks for the good discussion.
Excellent. Sounds great. And I'm sure we'll see you at the Northern Ontario Ag Conference.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Um, John Nicholas, please go
Yes,
ahead.
hi. I'm excited to be part of this group. It's very intriguing to me, um, even though I'm not going to understand a lot of the ag, you know, uh, I guess dialogue. I'm on the aquaculture side. I'm an oyster farmer. We're developing a robotic oyster farming equipment, but some components will be similar to what you guys have done, and I'm very excited to listen in on what's going on.
Excellent. Thanks for joining, John. That sounds interesting. Robotic oyster farming. Definitely not something we've seen in here before. So
No, we're converting all the equipment that just the way the first oxen plow converted into, the first tractor converted for oxen plow. That's where we are in the aquaculture business. They don't even have an oxen to plow, and we're going to a Tesla of aquaculture. We're going to a fully autonomous, basically machine that will grow the oysters. Several machines.
Oh, very cool. Very interesting. Well, thanks for being here,
We,
John.
sure.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry, I cut you off. What were you going to say?
We have a sister company called Barnstorm that developed the Swarm Technology tractor, utilizing the same engineers. But I'm not part of that company. But Barnstorm has a Barnstormer Ag Tech that has a autonomous tractor.
I see. Interesting. Storm. I'm just writing that down. Perfect. Thanks a lot for being here, John. We appreciate it.
Sure.
Was there anybody else who wanted to take the opportunity to introduce themselves? No? All right, perfect. In that case, we can just head on into our presentation for this week. Some of you may recognize or be familiar with Sean. He's been here probably about a year ago, presenting on their technology and their company. And Sean's back again at a very early hour for him to give us all an update on what's been going on. So, Sean, please take it away.
Cool, right on. Yeah, thank you again for having me. And I'm going to go over a bit of our history, so it'll be a little bit repetitive to what was going on last time, and then jump into what's happened over the past year, and then more into kind of some of the nuances or lessons learned over this kind of phase of our scale. But I'd love lots of questions as we go, and I'll try and keep it fairly quick as we get through this, so there's more time for discussion afterwards. But let me share my screen. Yeah, sorry. Okay. Again, thanks for having me. Sean O'Connor, CEO of Forge Robotics. We build robots that pick mushrooms. Oh shoot, this is out of date. Well, not all of this. So we're live on 4 farms across 3 continents. We've got a 5th farm going live in December. Yeah, a little over $15 million in contracted sales. Just raised a $40 million Series B round this summer. We've harvested over, I think it's 13 million mushrooms now in 2025. And we are the only company in the world that builds robots that can harvest on traditional Dutch rack mushroom farms. So the problem that we're trying to solve is access to labor in agriculture, not a unique one, knowing the expertise in this group. I'd say that mushrooms are unique compared to a lot of the other crops that folks are working on in this ag robotics working group, in the sense that we are solving a similar problem to you guys. It's just that our problem is daily because of the nature of the crop that our customers are harvesting. And that has really given us some advantages when it comes to attracting sales, and that we don't need to time our sales efforts or our marketing efforts. Like every single day of the year, if we reach out to a farm, it's the biggest problem they're facing. It's because they have a crop that grows at 4% an hour. So it doubles in size every day. Um, you're harvesting almost every day of the year, and you have a crop that your costs and your revenue are weeks apart. And so you have this like constant logistics challenge you're trying to stay on top of. So the very highest labor cost countries, you'd see up to half the cost to produce a mushroom is harvesting labor. And because it's a difficult job, like you're climbing up and down, or you're on these lorries, you're on ladders, you're bent over picking mushrooms in these racks that it's terrible ergonomics. The turnover is super high. So it can be anywhere from 30 all the way up to 50% annually on farms. At some farms that we've worked with, it's over 200%. And so you have a really challenging, labor logistics problem on how you solve getting people in to harvest mushrooms in what's also a consolidated industry. So it gives you the infrastructure and overhead to be able to solve the HR problem, but at a tremendous amount of costs. If you're a farm that has, one of our customers has about 2,200 people who all they do is pick, trim, and pack mushrooms. So you're replacing, upwards of 1,000 people annually to come in and harvest mushrooms. Like, it's a very difficult logistics engine that you need a lot of, money and time and effort behind, to be able to stay on top of. Yeah, our robots are computer vision, AI powered. We're a 100% labor replacement solution. That's been really helpful in terms of the adoption of our robots as well. And that, like, there's the residual jobs, the ones that are in the hallway. I'll get into that later. Those all remain. The ones, the harvesting job, you can literally close the door into the growing or harvesting room and replace all the people inside that room with the robots. And that makes it, cleaner from a perspective of adoption and, going through the, organizational behavior changes within our customer base, where they go from, writing what people should do on a whiteboard to just putting it into the app on their phone or on an iPad. We're now proving that you can obtain additional yield from our robots, particularly with our new model. And that's largely through kind of a 24-hour graze harvesting platform. We'll get into there. Anyways, we'll go way back in terms of how we got there. And step number one is building robots is hard. Like this was in 2020 when we were convinced that our robot was weeks away from being ready for commercialization. Um, you'll have it like in our test facility. We wanted to prove that we could pick the mushrooms, out of a, typical mushroom farms. This is a, real mushroom farm rack. We figured, trimming and packing and all that, we'll figure out to see if we can pick it and just drop it on the ground right now was step one. And this was like, again, at this point in time, this was unique in terms of, what had been accomplished in the mushroom world. Um, and really had us believe in like, okay, we're close. And we're still not fully there, now as we get towards the end of this year. So we're, 5 years removed from that date. And it's just a good reminder that when you have something that, looks compelling, that looks like it has, the ability to succeed in the robotics world, holy smokes, is it still difficult to get that into a product that is, truly commercially viable. And so here, this is about, I think, 6 or 7 months later as we continued on the journey. This is on an actual mushroom farm. So we've got to the point where we are picking on a real farm in their, room and their infrastructure, still not thinking at all about trimming and packing the mushrooms, operating at a speed that would never work and never be, even remotely acceptable from an ROI perspective. You lose that whole bed very quickly if you're picking at this speed when you've got mushrooms that are doubling in size every single day. But again, we thought, okay, we are seeing progress now. We've taken this, MVP concept onto a farm. It picks, one out of every two mushrooms. It gets done properly, and it's picking at a rate that is, about 20 to 30% the speed that's required for it to be actually successful. So, but we are close. Certainly, we are only weeks or months away from this being the smashing commercial success that we thought. Again, now we're talking about 4.5 years ago from today. So, good reminder that this takes a long time. It's very difficult and super expensive. So, it got to the point where we said 2023 will be the year. It was not. But we got a lot further along. This is, our third version of the robot, and so we had, better speed behind it, awful reliability metrics, but we saw like we can really pick up the speed. We started handling trimming and packing. We did a miserable job of it, but we knew that we needed to be able to get those done as well. And so we had the initial piece, but the version three was, inconsistent at opening the bunches. So if you see like you have these really tight clusters. This is a bad video because this is now in like the mature stage. But a few days earlier, what you need to be doing is these are all super small mushrooms, is picking out um, certain mushrooms to create room for other mushrooms to reach their maximum potential. So we get to a point where they can reach, big, full mushrooms, heavy mushrooms. Those are ones that really generate most of the revenue for a farm. We were doing a terrible job at both mechanically how we were picking the small mushrooms, but more importantly, the intelligence and the rules that we built. So we essentially had a rules-based engine using heuristic decision methodology on if we see mushrooms in this circumstance, pick this one to create the right amount of room. And then we'd keep watching them, and the mushroom farm would say, nope, you picked the wrong one there, and then we'd add another rule. We just keep adding rules to this like Frankenstein list of rules we needed the robots to be thinking through. That was a disaster, super slow, and the results were terrible. Thankfully, artificial intelligence has made leaps over the last 4, 5, 6 years. And so now we have a completely AI-based methodology that's initially was pattern recognition based on image annotation from the best harvesters. Like your best harvesters when it comes to opening the bunches or declustering or thinning the bed, they can position the bed for up to 25 to 35% better yield for the mushroom farm. So we just worked with them, had them annotate images matched based on what they were providing there. And then now what we have is, a proper feedback loop. So we know every single mushroom that we pick has its own unique identification number. We know the weight and quality of that mushroom once we pick it and trim it and pack it. And we know, we've taken a picture of that mushroom 5 to 30 times over the course of its life, depending on when in a cycle we chose to pick it. And then we know the kilograms per square meter or pounds per square foot of that specific region that I was growing in. So we are, not there yet, but on the cusp of being able to use the data we're getting from each week. So at the end of every week, you've harvested the whole bed. You know what the yield out of that room was and what the quality metrics were. We're going to be at a position sometime next year where we can start picking based on a constant feedback loop from what we're seeing in the room. Not there today, but we'll get there. So yeah, that was the big issue with V3 was poor thinning approaches, way too much downtime. This thing constantly broke. And then we had a lot of issues with packaging and box exchanges as well. I will get into the metrics afterwards. This is our robot in March 2024. Again, surely this is the one that's going to scale and be perfect and everything's going to go well from here, which was not the case. But we had, the robots working, downtime was really good. How they were trimming was better, but still a challenge that we had too many mushrooms that when they were picked out of the bed, we weren't perfectly trimming the peat off of the stem, and so you get a bit of a dirty looking mushroom ending up in the box, which is a big no-no and something that customers don't want to see. But downtime was really good. Picking speed was great. The intelligence that we were building into the thinning models was way better. So we saw really good results there. So here is our kind of early phase of what thinning looked like and how we were making decisions. So mechanically, we had a better approach. Um, oh, that's great. Let's show off this video of how good we are, and I missed a mushroom. But mechanically, we were doing a lot better. Decision-making process was resulting in better yield metrics, and we were starting to see, something that looked like we were, um, single percentage points away from a commercially viable product, not, totally overhauling the entire piece. This is both like an example of how far off we were at the time and, how proud we were, but we had box exchangers working really well. But of course, you look at that floor and you can see it's a lot of food that we're throwing onto the floor. But overall, we were happy with it. Box exchange was working well. You no longer had, people involved at all. Um, and we were in a state where we thought that we would be able to move towards commercialization probably faster than we have already, but we can get into some of the decisions that led us down that path. And of course, there's always your classic blooper reel disasters, nice big box of mushrooms that we chuck all over the floor. And that happened more often than we would have cared to admit. 2025, this is going to be the year. Everything's perfect. Not quite, but we're getting closer there. So we've got, again, the robot at the start of this year, continued improvements. We made way better improvements to the trimming mechanism. You can see now we handed off the mushroom to trim fingers. Trim fingers would then be able to trim the mushroom. We could take pictures to see if we did it properly and then decide if we wanted to put the mushroom in the product box or discard it entirely. We're able to see the robots run consistently for days at a time without any mechanical issues or any sort of downtime of note. So we were able to get to a point where the robots were harvesting well, matching or exceeding human yield as they were picking into boxes, but still had their own limitations. We couldn't pack mushrooms into the like directly into the little plastic packages you see at the grocery store, the little pre-packs or punnets or clamshells, depending on what you call them. So that was a big issue because more and more grocery stores are going into mushrooms in the little pre-packages. And a mushroom, I should note, is more delicate than anything else in the produce aisle, so you can't move it 2 times. Like you can't pick up a mushroom and place it into packaging for the grocery store. It'll get bruised too easily, it damages too easily. And so whatever you're packing it into at the mushroom farm, that needs to be what it shows up to in the bed. And so this is our new one. This is the robot that is now operating on a couple farms around the world. It's packing directly into punnets. So you take pictures of it, so you have a 360-degree view that you can assess quality of the mushroom. You can decide where to put the mushroom based on that quality metric. You can start picking multiple different sizes of mushrooms on the same pass and put them in different packaging. And so what this allows us to do is increase our overall pick rate, increase the quality of the product that ends up going to the grocery store. And then it's placing mushrooms directly into the little pre-packed punnets that are going direct to the grocery store as well. So we're super excited about this new model of the robot. I think we're in a stage now where there's still some tweaking and calibration that need to be done. It's been live for a few months this year. It's live in Ireland and Canada, but is really the one that is starting to scale more aggressively. And so yeah, here's our new packaging system that we use for these punnets, where it goes on a little elevator. We have punnet denesters above it. That's been a whole challenge as well, trying to figure out. And then conveyor belt goes to the end of the room. And then with some farms, they're looking at putting the conveyor belts then through the corridor directly into the cold room. So you'd have mushrooms go into the refrigerated cold room, minutes after they've been picked. So we're seeing, really good quality metrics, good yield that we're seeing coming out of the room on a product that is, in its kind of final stages of calibration. And again, we've said this lots of times before and been wrong, but we think this is the one that really is able to, start scaling commercially with a lot of our customers. Um, yeah, we're live today. The cool part, again, this is a super concentrated space. Like our 7 customers need over $1 billion of robots with huge amounts of recurring revenue as well. And then we've got a growing list of, I'd call them warm prospects that we think will jump in here as well. That's the most unique part of this industry is that, these are big farms doing hundreds of millions of dollars a year in revenue with their highest cost being harvesting labor. And so you've got, a big ability to work with them on that. This is a bit dated. I think we're now up to 13 or 14 patents either submitted or but we only have one that's patented at this point in time. But continuing to try and do what we can to protect our intellectual property. Proud of all the work we've put into it. Want to stay on top of it. Uh, Oh, yeah, this July we raised some money. So we've raised $40 million. I think that's the other kind of lesson is one, this takes a heck of a lot longer than you think it's going to for those who are kind of early in their journey on the robotics stage. And I'm sure lots of you will figure out better paths and make less mistakes than we did, but it takes a long time. And it's expensive. So, since I've taken over this business, we've raised over $60 million in the last, less than 3 years, to get to a point where we're just now scaling our commercialization efforts. It's like that's a piece that, we are at a disadvantage here in Canada in terms of access to investor capital being more challenging than you see in other spots. And, that is a major headwind in the hardware space. Like building hardware companies is hard. It's expensive. It takes longer than we want it to, which is also really expensive. But once you get there, you have such a wonderful moat. And you think about what's happening now in the pure software space in terms of, new competitors being able to be built through, artificial intelligence efforts with, a very small team. The moat that you can create as a software company is so challenging, whereas what you can create as a hardware company is immense in terms of your ability to get to market before anyone else, and then you'll have real lead time before competitors start showing up. So I think this is an area that Canadians as builders are particularly good at, that we lack the capital to excel in the space, which is really challenging because I think that building a hardware company on a shoestring budget, like we've seen the impact of that in Canada over the last 20 years, and it's not good. So we need to find ways to flow more capital into these types of companies. We have the type of people who excel at it. Um, and then this is the next frontier where you're going to see, I think, the most lucrative companies winning is going to be in the robotics and hardware space. And that once you build that first moat, which is the hardware you've created, you have time to then build the second moat, which for us is we now again are able to see millions of mushrooms a month, understand what was done around those mushrooms from a harvesting technique. We're adding sensors to the robots too, so calculating temperature and humidity and CO2 and everything else that can impact that mushroom's growth cycle. By the time a credible competitor shows up who can build robots that harvest mushrooms on a traditional mushroom farm, we will have gone from being a labor replacement solution into a revenue optimization solution. And keep in mind, a revenue optimization solution that has no additional expenses to it, other than some friendly AI fees that we'll be charging in the recurring revenue. But you can, go to customers and say, look, you make $200 million in revenue a year. You can replace in your labor with our robots. And if you amortize that over 7, 8, 9, 10 years, depending on what they want, it's going to, say add another 10 to 12% EBITDA for you annually. And if you believe in our AI being the backbone to drive higher yield outputs, you can also bring in another 5, 6, 7% EBITDA annually through increased revenue. So it becomes super compelling where we get this first moat from hardware, use that to build your second moat, which was data and artificial intelligence, and allows you to really kind of get to that next stage. So where we are today. Focusing on growth, we're moving into a 40, or we've moved into a 40,000 square foot manufacturing facility. So we are going all in on, scaling manufacturing. We have a bunch of big customers, in countries around the world, and we're trying to land a few more of them. So our view is that we don't want a lot of customers. We just want the big ones, or ones who want to be big, because they're going to be the ones who bankrupt everyone else in their region. And I'll get into kind of what that looks like from an industry perspective, but it'll be a lot more compelling for us to it's a lot more lucrative for us to sell more robots to the same customers than it is for us to continuously add and grow our customer base and do, 4 or 8 or 12 robot deployments. It'd be a lot better if we can just work with one, send them their first 12, then send them another 40, then send them another 60, and just keep kind of building up from there. We get, really lucrative margins as we start scaling that part. I would like it if this round, so we just raised $40 million this summer, as I mentioned. The intention is for that to get us to default to live. If we ever do raise again, I want it to be because there's, some really cool opportunity that we can take on, or because the, shareholder value makes sense. But, every raise we've done in the past was we need to raise this capital or we die. I want us to get to a point like the culture we're trying to build is we want to show we can build a global leader in the little town of Salmon Arm, so small town Canada, showing that it can create, the very best company in the world in its space, showing that it can pay, Toronto or Vancouver wages, but live in, what is one of the most beautiful communities in Canada. And to do that, we would need to, continue down this path of lots of commercial success, prove these robots are able to start going from being labor replacement solutions to also revenue optimization solutions, and then start stacking up orders and saying, okay, we can choose if we want to raise capital or if we want to get to profitability or default alive. And yeah, we're expanding our European office. We've got, a new leader there. We've got 4 or 5 people we've hired in Europe. That is um, the most important market for us. It's super high labor costs in Western Europe, and then Europeans just eat more mushrooms than North Americans. So it's, from that perspective, we want to be aggressive in scaling our operations in Europe, and seeing, yeah, really kind of good initial traction there. Okay. Other pieces that I wanted to chat through, and I'll start opening this up for questions. But things that I wanted to chat through were, um, what do I think this means from an industry perspective, and then what are the challenges that we're seeing today? So, like industry perspective, what I find to be, fascinating for where I think this is going is we're starting to see some customers get really aggressive in planning how they're going to use automation. And so I think it's probably, an interesting lesson that, many other ag robotics companies are dealing with in their own industry. And it's just because it's top of mind for me over the last month or two that like I want to think about how we position ourselves for this industry change. But when new technology comes into an industry that's totally game changing, so not, edge case, small optimization here or there, but it's truly going to change, the overall operations and output of a crop. I think you see this new seam of, opportunity open up. And I think it's incumbent on, the company who's creating that seam to figure out how they want to take advantage of the new opportunity. And I actually don't have an answer for us, but I'll go through some of the things we're thinking about. But, effectively, if you look at the mushroom industry, if you go back to, the late 80s or early 90s, the mushroom industry had, a massive change as it went to Dutch rack shelves. So it went to these kind of big aluminum shelves that you saw our robots picking on. And then it moved to phase 3 compost. And so effectively the output by, making these changes was you saw better quality and significantly higher yield. So more revenue for every crop that these farms were taking on, but it came with an immense capex. And so those who made the decision to adopt the new innovation, they won, and those who didn't died. And because you've got a crop where this, mushrooms again are unique, but I think this is true for a lot of crops. What makes mushrooms particularly unique is that once you gain an advantage over your customers, you can kill them very quickly in the sense that every week you have revenue coming in and costs going out. You have crops turning over. So if you're running a, canola farm in Saskatchewan and you see that your neighbor, has adopted an autonomous tractor, an autonomous combine, and all of a sudden they have this cost advantage over you, and you go, oh, that's interesting. Maybe I want to watch it again next year and see if there's any issues. And okay, yeah, they seem to be doing well. Okay, by year 3, I'm going to adopt this and I'm going to make sure. And so I've got, two crops worth of inefficiencies compared to them. And so over the course of 24 to 36 months, like it's the urgency required to be an early adopter is fairly low in a lot of agriculture. What works really well for us in the mushroom industry is, if my competitor's got a 10% efficiency over me from a profitability perspective, they're going to get that every single week of the year. So if you have, let's say we're doing $100 million a year in revenue or $200 million a year in revenue, that's $4 million, of revenue per week that I'm now at a disadvantage of on a company that is now calling Walmart and calling Sobeys and saying, hey, we can give you a 10% discount this week if you buy our mushrooms. And so you have this ability to like displace your customers quickly because you have a crop that you're harvesting every week and it goes bad in like 7 to 8 days. So you need to sell it really quickly. And so because of that, those who are able to adopt new technology, they can wipe out the competitors really quickly. And that's been super helpful for us for getting customers to buy our janky robots that weren't working very good and be patient with us to like get them to a point where they're happy with it. Um, and so I think that that is going to be the next seam of opportunity that we see. And so that, going back to the original story of the last time this happened in the, late 80s and 90s, there's over 1,200 mushroom farms in Ireland. Today there's about 24. I think what's going to happen, and that's true of every country in the world. They all had, call it 1,000, went down to anywhere from like 8 to 30 is kind of the typical amount that you'd see in any country. And I think that this next wave of innovation is going to take it down to 2 or 3 or 4 in any given country. So you're going to see this huge change happen in the industry. For those who want to adopt an innovation, they will win. And look, maybe our robot never gets there and we totally keep screwing things up. But like if I look at the results we're seeing today, there's already a decent ROI. We have customers now buying more of our robots, which is that was like the first sigh of relief as we had our farm in Ireland and a farm in Australia say, okay, thank you. We'd like to buy some more. And so they're still not perfect. There's still lots of work to do and happy to get into that with them. But like those who adopt the robots and they pick the right robotic provider, the right automation solutions provider, they will bankrupt their customers. They'll consolidate them. And that's the fascinating aspect of working in a commodity business is just how some of these large farming companies, most of our customers are owned by pension funds or private equity funds or large corporate capital, and they've got this very kind of corporatized way of thinking through things. So I think that is the when I permit myself to have like time to think long term, and usually that's when I get us in a lot of trouble. That's the area that I'm trying to think through. Like, how do we want to win in that space? Is it selling robots all around the world? Do we pick some countries that we want to sell mushrooms? And is that an aspect where we want to figure out how we could win in that space? And I think that we don't have the answers there today. Um, and so like that's about as far distracted as I allow myself to go before even thinking about other crops or other things like that. And then in terms of the challenges we face today is like we've created a product that works well, it's still not perfect and needs a lot of work, and we're scaling commercially. And I think that this is still the right path for us as a business because we've got a product that we have a lot of belief in. We're making our big bet in terms of money spent and everything else there. And I think it's a an interesting idea for Canadian companies who are building robotic solutions who often go a different direction than we're going, and for justifiable reasons as well. Like we may look like idiots, and the ones who scaled this huge amount of costs before having a product that was ready to scale commercially. But I think that there needs to be more companies at least exploring this opportunity of saying, hey, our product is not perfect, but we want to seize the advantage of being, the first and the best in the world. And so we're going to scale quickly with this product that's imperfect, meaning we're going to have much higher deployment costs because we're going to need to have people around the robots, continuously working and tweaking with them. We're going to need to have your deployment people are going to need to be more expensive because they're not just your typical field service people. They need to be, constantly feeding back improvements on product back to HQ. And so because of that, like we've got a business that burns, upwards of $1.5 million a month. And, that keeps a lot of, keeps anxiety fairly high. But I do think it's a bit more of an American approach that we're trying to take here. I've seen really good results in terms of the overall speed and adoption and customer traction and product improvements that we're really proud of. And I think that's one that like generally we don't get the ability to do that in Canada because we're not afforded the opportunity because of the challenge of getting capital. But I do worry that sometimes we get a little stuck in not releasing our crappy products out to the world so we can learn faster and how to improve them. And so I think that that's one piece that I'm particularly proud of that we've done. And again, as you guys are reading some Globe and Mail article a year from now in terms of us blowing up and becoming a disaster, you'll go, ha, he was wrong. But like, I think it's one of those opportunities where we get to see just a speed and pace that mimics more of kind of the robotics companies I've seen from our southern partner in the US. That is, thrilling to be a part of, gives us the best chance to win, but comes with a heck of a lot more risk and anxiety along the way. So I think that's really all I wanted to chat on today, and then open it up for any questions that folks may have.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Sean. Uh, Joe, that was a hand up?
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Sean. Terrific progress. Congratulations on
Thank you.
all your hustle. Um, I don't think a lot of the people on this call are entrepreneurs. They're just 3, 4, 5 years behind you. Can you give a little bit more depth on your backstory, how you got here, and then share a couple of, I wish I knew um, then what I know now, tidbits, almost like that last little bit. Like, let's pick your brain here to help the next generation, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure, just writing that down.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, it's great. Yeah, so my backstory, initially built the software company back in 2014, led by a guy named Kevin Sandus called Grow Technologies and sold to ATB. Chris, who runs this business with me, he and I were both leaders at that company and got to see kind of, firsthand how to build a startup, all the chaos that goes with that, the benefit of building something that matters and that is, people want to pay money to acquire the company. Um, then moved into the world of venture capitals. That's where I worked with Joe Dales and a handful of other kind of key leaders across the ag innovation spectrum. But the first fund I launched was so after Grow, like I kind of knew a little bit about building companies. I had a bit of a reputation that I think was mostly good, hopefully, and I wanted to get into venture capital, but I certainly wasn't important enough to be able to like start my own fund or anything like that. And so a little credit union called Connexus Credit Union in Saskatchewan decided they wanted to build a fund that was investing in predominantly Saskatchewan, we kind of called the three flyover provinces in the general technology space. So I thought, hey, I could, I'm the type of person who could do a good job here. And, it was a little less competitive in trying to get that job in terms of it being like a, little credit union that, no one had ever heard of before. But it made a huge impact, made a lot of, or is positioned to make a lot of money. Like I think the distributed earnings on our 2018 fund is about half the fund already, and TVPF's the overall money for the fund is at about two. So like well into its life, it's returned half the money to investors and still has lots of high value assets like soft or like Seven Shifts and Coconut Software and Tave and all these really kind of exciting companies that I was an investor in. That was fund number one, and then we built another fund called Emertech, which was a fund focused on Canadian ag tech. And the idea behind that was like, hey, we've proven if you untie that one arm behind Prairie founders' backs, it can really kick butt and build something unique and show they can be the best. What if we actually leaned into one of our core strengths, which was agriculture, and built a fund that was built around that, and it was less geographically focused on prairies, but more focused kind of across Canada on like we are prairie folks, and therefore we know agriculture fairly well, and we've still sort of figured out the world of venture capital and what we can invest here. Anyways, so we started that fund. One of the companies I invested in was called Tech Brew Robotics, which is now Forge Robotics. So I moved back into the operator seat about 3 years ago. And that's a whole other session that we could have another day in terms of the trials and tribulations of taking over a portfolio company. And that sounds way more nefarious than it was. It was the request of the founder and CEO through a lot of reasons. But that's my path into this. And so then coming into this, I had a unique advantage over a lot of other founders in that I really understood how to raise capital. And so that's a piece where I think I am a very mediocre to poor CEO and founder when it comes to, building an ag robotics company on the technical side. I think I'm pretty good at the product side. Um, but fundraising, which is, a key driver, I think, in being successful in the hardware space is something that I've been fairly good at. And I think that's given us an advantage to be able to move faster as a company. And so I just think that like the one takeaway there in terms of the pieces that have worked well is like spend time and effort sharpening your sales skills. And like that is a piece that is just so critical to sell customers on buying a shitty product that barely works and not selling them snake oil, like telling them like, hey, my product's probably not going to work that well, but here's how we'll start working well, and here's why you should believe in us. And like that is a really challenging, aspect. Selling people to come work for you. Like if you want to build the very best company in the world, it's unlikely you're going to do that with mediocre talent. So how do you go find the best people who can help you scale and build the business? And that's, we found great people out of Waterloo to come out to a little town in Salmon Arm and join our business. And so we've seen like we know where the best are in Canada, and we try to be aggressive on finding them and bringing them out here. Um, so that'd be the other piece. And then lastly, selling people on investing in your company and your vision and believing that you're going to be a good steward of their capital and building a winner. So I'd say when in doubt, if you've got additional capacity, which I know none of us do, pick up a book on sales and like just try and learn more and more about that because it's going to help you, whether it's recruiting, sales, or fundraising. Happy to, if anyone ever wants to do like just the fundraising piece, I'm happy to do one-on-one sessions there. Just like there's a formula that I think works. And more than happy to kind of do that in a way that it really just allows you to get the right message out to the right investors, get them to vet you out quickly if you're a bad fit, get to create kind of competitive tension amongst investors, and then hopefully see multiple term sheets like we did this summer, which is that's really you have to get multiple term sheets if you want decent terms and to be able to build your company. So that'd be the piece that I think I've done well. That I had a skill set that really let me lean into that. In terms of the areas where we've struggled, um, look, I have a lot of challenges. I don't even know what the solutions are, but like supply chain suck, that's the challenge. Like deciding when you go for it on large orders and when you hold back and knowing the time implications. Like we've got this huge issue where it's not as simple as saying like, hey, we burn $30,000 a day. So if this helps us be 5 days faster, therefore it's $150,000 in like value for us. So let's just do that. Like you keep doing that quickly and you run out of money really fast. But speed is a cost, and like daily burn rate is a cost. And I think that that's the piece that I struggle with on like the balance between those two things. On like when do we just order both of these parts, or when do we airship something, or when do we do this because it'll make us faster, versus like when are you being totally reckless with how you're using capital. So you keep building up this inventory that you would inevitably have to write down and then explain to your board. So that'd be like that's the area that I think I struggle with the most that we're still trying to figure out. And now we're doing it at a much larger scale. So when we screw up, like it really shows up and it looks, you look pretty dumb fairly quickly if you make the wrong decisions there. But we've just got such a culture that needs to move quickly for us to like, be excited and find fulfillment. That's the area that we are constantly, I think, in a healthy push and pull. But I just think that like, yeah, the North Star we try and live behind is that speed is one of the number one advantages we have as a company. And so how do we optimize for that? Would love to, if anyone else is dealing with those challenges themselves, would love to collaborate on it because I don't have the answers, but I know it's the area that's worth the most amount of time for working on.
Excellent. Thanks, Sean. Great, great answer there. Um, we've got a couple hands and there's a couple questions in the chat as well. So I'm going to do a back and forth kind of thing. So I'll head into the chat. Giuliano said, as always, Sean, appreciate your honesty. Last time you described this innovative rebate approach you take with your existing customers when it comes time to upgrade their robots to your latest version. Are you still continuing with that?
Yeah, good question. So yes, but under the same lens, where like there's a few things, and there's another question just after that I saw from Tara on how do we convince farmers to adopt our earlier versions. Those are kind of tied into each other in terms of our earlier sales. We're not doing this now, as now we've got a real product. You can go fly out and see it and walk the farm. You can talk to the farm about it. But I think the things we leaned on in the early days, which I encourage everyone to take a look at on their own journey, are what can you do to incentivize customers to buy your shitty product, like and in a way that is not fooling them, because that's going to be 1,000 times worse if you end up giving them a crappy product and you say it's going to be great. I think the areas that we were really successful with this were, one, making sure they understand that as the product improves, they will get the upgraded new product. with a minimum order size. So all these things, when you do the nice thing, but do it in a way that makes sense for your business. So if you're buying four robots for us and it's, it'd be kind of $1.3 million ish in terms of total cost to buy four of our robots. You're going to show up. They're not going to work great, but here's what we think we can get them to within the first kind of 60 days, and you're going to be happy with the ROI. And look, you're going to see our robots and be like, I think they're going to make some changes here. We're going to, if they're small changes, we'll just do it for you for free. If it's like big model changes, just know that if you ever want to upgrade to one of our other models, you can have your current four robots upgraded or retrofitted or replaced as well with a minimum order size of 20 robots. So it gets to a point of like, I'm not creating this growing liability that one day we're going to finally have the robot that works and have $15 million of robots that we need to replace before we even get any sales. They're all going to come with new huge sales. The replacement will eat a bit into our margins, but it won't be devastating. We'll still have, really exciting. We'll still be popping champagne, when that order of 20 robots comes in with a replacement of four. And so that would be the first piece that in terms of how to give them comfort that they're not buying the crappy prototype that then their competitor down the road is going to have a better version of, and they're going to go, why did I help you guys accelerate so quickly when I get treated so poorly? And then the second one that I'm actually entertaining right now in one other country. I thought I'd be completely done with it, but there's such a huge player in that country that might make sense, is contractual exclusivity in specific regions. And so the way that no, a lot of people hate that I've done this. Like I have, investors who push back and board members who are like, you shouldn't have done that. And it's like that, every business needs to think through if that was the right path. But what we did was contractual exclusivity based on minimum order volumes, and that becomes really compelling. So you go to a customer and you say, "Hey, you want 100% exclusivity in XYZ country? We can do that, but here's the order schedule you need to hit." So four robots as initial order, or eight robots as initial order, 24 robots in 6 months, 60 robots in the following 12 months, and you have this like step up schedule where if they're able to hit that, you're going to be so busy and so happy with the outcome in that country that you're not even going to worry about saying no to these other customers. And so you have this ability to then, match the exclusivity to the commercial outcomes that you want to achieve. And then if this works out, that farm's going to end up being the winner in that country. They're going to have a cost advantage because they're going to take their, 30, 40, 50% OpEx costs, throw it down into CapEx with some recurring revenues that we charge, and then the financing fees there. If it's amortized over a decade, like you've got such a huge cost advantage to your competitors that we're not going to even need to worry about when the exclusivity runs out because they're just going to keep consolidating and then buying more robots. And then you have, one customer who's savvy at running the robots, less sites that you're going to, so less deployment teams. The perfect world for us is you go to small town Ireland and we have three full-time employees there, and they are, we're still making 80% margins off of them, including parts and services for service and maintenance fees. And if anything ever goes wrong with a robot, we've got a couple spares in the parking lot that we own. We pop them on, fix their robot, get them back up and running. You can do that when you have super large farms with a huge fleet in one town. It's very difficult to do that if you have four robots in one city and then four robots, 6 hours away in another town, and then eight robots 5 hours from there. Like concentration of fleet allows you to get really lucrative in terms of your service and maintenance fees and your efficiencies as a company. And so we've leaned into that in those types of scenarios with these exclusivity agreements. But again, go at your own peril. There's a lot of downside to exclusivity as well. Those would be the two pieces. One is we are going to make sure you always have the best product if you buy a bunch more, and you can have an exclusivity with us if you have huge order volumes that you commit to as well.
Excellent. Jason, go ahead.
Thanks. And thanks, Sean. I'll try to be quick here. I just want to say thanks too for reframing sales there. It sounds like it's kind of about effective communication. I'm kind of really boiling down to that. But to my questions, I have one quick question and maybe one that's a bit longer. First one is, are you getting into any like fancy mushrooms like oyster or anything like that, or focusing on the button now?
Just the button mushroom. So that's about the $60 billion global mushroom industry, somewhere around kind of low 50s would be the just regular boring white and brown mushrooms. I think we'd
Hmm.
be we'd be more likely to go into other crops than specialty mushrooms. Totally different ballgame, different customer base. Super lucrative for the small time farmers who are now getting bigger at it in a really interesting space, but there's not a lot of application for our technology and not a lot of integration within our own customer base.
Okay, cool. And then second question is, you mentioned that you measure weight and quality. What, if you can speak on it, like what is quality and how do you measure that?
Yeah, and we'll screw this up, but we've got what are the characteristics that we look for? Uh, Shape, color, bruising, um, like denting or cuts, and veil opening up. So the veil opens up is one. I'm missing some other ones. We have a handful of different characteristics that we look and have a grading schedule on them, and then tell our customer. Essentially, what they typically want is AAA grade mushrooms or value pack mushrooms. And that's most of them are that black and white. Some of them might have one other categorization, but we'll have all these different things that we look at the mushroom for when we take those kind of quick pictures in sequence. If they trigger too many of those characteristic challenges, or if even one of them is really high in what is being seen, then it'll be put into the value pack. And if not, then it'll go into the AAA. And it's really more art than science with our customers. Like we'll set it to, one setting or aggressiveness, and then they'll just look at the product and say, take a picture of it, and they'll say this was bad. And we'll go, okay, we can, backtrack into seeing what decision we made. Or they'll send us a picture of the value pack and be like, why are there so many good mushrooms in here? I'm like, okay, we need to change the aggressiveness on this. And it's just really a balancing act where, you want to get to about kind of 97% of the weight coming out of the room are sold as high grade mushrooms. And you're just filtering out the really bad ones that go into, value packs that really end up usually being, shredded and sold as product for, ingredients or things like that. So that's the piece where like a human being doesn't need to be perfect at it, and the farm's still going to be fairly happy with it. The weighing piece is where we actually save a lot of additional labor costs because people are really bad at that. When you're moving, trying to hit your quota, you're doing the shittiest job in the world. You don't like doing it. Like just get your weight and get out of there. Make as much as you can. You're not weighing and spotting every mushroom based on what you think it's going to weigh, and then placing in a container to reduce giveaway. Where if you can go from like 5% giveaway down to 1% giveaway, that's 4% profit for a farm that's doing, $100 million a year. That's $4 million of, free profit that you can maximize in. Or what happens with some farms is they take all of their punnets, they put them into the cold room. The cold room conveyor goes down a shelf. And then if they weigh too much, they go to the right and they have mushrooms removed. If they weigh too little, they go to the left and they have mushrooms added in there. So that's how you can reduce giveaway today, but there's a lot of labor costs that come with that too. Now you got a person adding and picking out a mushroom. So either way, we're going to hit the bottom line in terms of overall impact on how we can support these farms. And that is the weighing side is just super sensitive load sensors where the denesters are, and then using artificial intelligence to predict what the weight of a mushroom will be based on the size of the mushroom and the recent results on the weight of mushrooms of in that area. So you have kind of a better barometer on expected water content and things like that.
Thank you very much.
So thanks, Jason. Just want to be conscious of the time here. We've only got a couple of minutes left in the call. So Matt, I'll pass it on to you if you've got a quick question.
Okay, I'll ask it and we can just shelve it if not. Because my original question was related to upgrade path, which Sean, you did a great job answering. So
Oh,
that was
thanks.
my original question, which is answered. But the question I will ask, which we may not have time for, is so we're developing Orchard Robotics in Waterloo. So commodity business, like selling to farmers who are in a commodity business. So you'd mentioned the potential of accidentally bankrupting your customers, right? And so
Right.
one of the things we're thinking about is as we are able to roll out the robots, we'll reduce the marginal cost of production for those that use the robots, same as you, right? And so your customers, in theory, in a commodity market, will eventually be the only profitable folks or anyone using robotics, right? And then eventually that may cause downward pressure on pricing. So initially, really helps grow our profitability, which is really a priority for us. But
Right.
then farm gate prices get depressed, right?
Yeah.
And so then it's sort of it's table stakes right? And then either that savings is passed through to eaters, which is great, reduces the cost of food, improves food affordability, or the grocers, stack their profit margin. So
Right.
I thought is as someone working in robotics, helping growers, trying to help their grower profitability and commodity market, is there a way to solve that, or is that outside of where we should focus as robotics companies?
Yeah, I think we just focus on the innovations. I think that what will happen in our industry is what my guess will happen in our industry is automation will be adopted. Commodity businesses will behave like commodity business and they'll engage in, predatory style pricing. It's not predatory, they'll just engage in a new profit margin where they can gain more market share. They'll cripple the competition. The consumer will get a much better deal. So cost of mushrooms will go down for a brief period of time. Consolidation will happen, and then you'll have very few players engaged in any region, and then oligopoly behaviors will begin, and then prices will start rising again, and we'll all complain about this, and they'll say, "Who the hell created, brought robots into this space? They ruined everything." Like that's what I think will happen over time. I hope I'm wrong, but like,
It won't be
yeah,
fast.
yeah, like it'll be. Yeah, we as consumers will benefit for a period of time while those who have automation engage in pricing behaviors to try and gain market share. And that'll be wonderful for us. And then as the market consolidates, usually that works against the consumer.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Excellent.
That's what we guessed too.
Yeah. I hope I'm wrong, but yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, Matt. Sean, once again, thank you very much. Great presentation, great questions, conversation. We really appreciate you taking the time to be here this morning and let everybody know what you're up to.
Absolutely. Hey, I love what you guys are doing. If you ever want to turn this into a Friday lunch club, it'd be a lot easier for us West Coasters to make it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right on. Awesome.
Um,
Thanks.
no problem. Thank you. Yeah, not don't really have many agenda updates, so I figured I'd just let it the conversation was good and flowing, so I figured I'd just sort of let it run its course. But we are at the end of the meeting. So thank you very much to everybody for joining. Have a great weekend. We will see you all in December.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody.
All right, thank you.